Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have a great show today here on Gojo and Golic to send you into the weekend. Here is what we are going to be talking about. Simone Biles cannot be stopped. She keeps adding golds to her collection. We're going to talk about everything that she has accomplished in Paris. Plus, Marshall Newhouse, former OT, going to join us to talk NFC. That'll be great. And Channel 6 newsletter Spencer Hall. He's going to talk Olympics. He's going to talk college football. We got all that and more really good stuff coming up on Gojo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Happy Friday. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield hanging out in the DraftKings studio in Boston. Fun show coming up for everybody. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review the thing. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings network. Excited for Marshall and Spencer to stop by. I'm counting on Spencer Hall to be the one to get me hooked on rugby sevens. I know we all got jacked up about it around here when the Team USA women won bronze, and that was a big moment for them. Spencer Hall actually is a fan of rugby outside of just when we talk about it every 4 years. I don't really know or understand any of the rules, and so I'm counting on Spencer to be able to help translate a little bit for us and see if rugby is something I can add to the portfolio even after we depart Paris. So that's going to be fun. But, Dad, true sickos unite. We got football back last night. We'll get to everything else here, but this is the thing that we've all been jonesing for all offseason long. I know the NFL never really stops, but now it's officially started. The Bears and the Houston Texans kicked it off last night. Unfortunately, a game that did not actually finish, called due to inclement weather in Canton, Ohio, with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter. So, Dad, fond memories for you of thinking back to the first preseason football game you were ever a part of for these guys that all got to be the first preseason game of the season because their teams were so laden with Hall of Famers from years past?
It was actually the Hall of Fame game. I did not play in it because I broke my ankle in the first training camp, my rookie year, but we did play in the Hall of Fame game. So I did take the trip to Canton and went through, the whole thing of the Hall of Famers being there and such. And so I did go through that experience and yeah, I didn't play in the first preseason game till the next year. But it's excitement. It's that newness, especially when you're a young player. I was a 10th round pick trying to make the team. Everybody's kind of in a different position. You have starters that aren't playing, that are secure. You have guys trying to make the back end of a roster. So every snap into what would be the fourth quarter, not in this game, is important for them. So it is amazing the amount of players you have on the field and the differences in where they are in their team. And most fans just care about the starters, and the starters really weren't playing in this game, weren't doing anything in this game, wearing street clothes. So it was a game to just say football is back and let's focus on the new shiny toy, the kickoff rule.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard Ryan Clark, to your point about the discrepancies and where everyone's at, when they were in the rain delay and threw it back to the Sports Center set, saying, he goes, I had to remember and kind of did as I got into year 9, year 10, year 11, where I wasn't worried about my status going into these games.
Right.
If something like this had happened, that, hey, there are guys on this roster that desperately need those reps if we need to go back out there, even though I would much rather us call this and me just get back on the bus and be able to go home here. You mentioned, Dad, before we get to the new rules, and the NFL did debut its new kickoff format last night. We got plenty of reps of that, as I'm sure special teams coordinators have been up all night during the preseason scouting this stuff out and trying to figure out how they're going to adjust. Caleb Williams was one of those guys in street clothes on the sideline. A lot made of him not getting any reps in this game, their decision to not play him. Did you have any issue with that? I know that's kind of become the parlance of our time with guys not playing, starters not playing. But Caleb Williams in particular, number 1 overall pick, rookie quarterback with all these expectations. Do you think he should have gotten some game reps?
Well, I think if you were going to start him, you'd have to start the entire first-team offense. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't start Caleb Williams. You want him working with the guys he's going to be working with, like you start with the second-team offense, so you don't want to put your first-team quarterback behind it. So it's a decision, obviously, for Caleb Williams, but for all the starters that were missing time. Same with Houston. It was the starting second offensive line. So you're not going to put your starter out there. So I get that. Though in a vacuum, you'd like to see a rookie get some reps, even though we'll have 3 games still to get some reps. So I can see it both ways. The natural instinct is to say, man, I'd like to see him get a few reps. But as I said, it would include all the other starters being on the field. And if you don't want to go down that road, then you do exactly what you did.
Yeah, like I could see a series being something that was kind of valuable, just going through the pregame mechanics, quite honestly. And I know that's something that teams will actually spend time on, right? Is, hey, this is what we do on game day. You'll spend a practice where we're going to go through our game day mechanics. We're going to go through the timing of it because it's a new routine for you. Coaches at every level of football are striving to try and make the routine as close to the same for every game possible because they don't want you to have to think. They want that to be second nature. Well, right now it's first nature for Caleb Williams and for some of these new guys on the roster that they've brought over. And so just for things like that, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think ultimately it's going to be fine. That won't be the difference at Drive in the preseason with what goes on with Caleb as the year goes on and not. So I do think it's interesting. Shout out to, we saw a clip, Dad, from the first episode of Hard Knocks where the Bears will obviously be the star. And I don't know, did you guys have to do this back in the day when you were coming into the league? Because I know this was a tradition when I was a rookie coming in 2013, and we saw here where they make the rookies get up, they say their name, they say their alma mater, Caleb claiming both Oklahoma and USC, by the way, for those keeping score at home. And then you have to say your signing bonus, and we saw all the oohs and ahs when Caleb Williams said signing bonus $25.5 million as the rest of the room saw the new money coming out. My favorite part was I think he was pointing back to like the GM and everyone upstairs in the meeting room who actually helped negotiate the deal.
Yeah, we did not have to say signing bonus. The signing bonus is now all relative to the time you're signing that. Mine was $17,500.
Damn.
Which I used it to buy a new car. But I don't remember.
What car did you buy?
Yeah, what kind of a car was that for 17?
An IROC with the T-tops.
I guess this was before you had kids.
Oh yeah, yes. I didn't marry your mother until the 3rd year in the league. So yeah.
Damn, what were you waiting for?
It was an IROC, like an IROC 280Z IROC, with the T-top pop-offs roof. And it got stolen a couple of times. It got stolen a couple of times in Houston. Yeah, twice.
Wait, a couple of times, and they got it back?
Yeah, they got it back.
No, they got it back once. And the second time I just said tow it to the dealership. I don't want it. I bought a Jeep after that because it got stolen twice.
Were they popping off the T-top roof parts and stealing it? Was it the design of the car itself that made it easier to steal?
I don't remember that if they popped off the T-tops to steal it. All I know, it was gone. That's all I knew.
Wait, was this car so fresh, it was so hot that people were just fiending to steal it?
It was red. Oh yeah. It was happening.
Okay.
No, it wasn't happening. That wasn't happening. Like I said, I got it stolen twice, and I said I'm done with this thing. Give me a Jeep Wrangler, and I'm good.
Okay.
Oh my God. Also, by the way, 17.5 for the signing bonus in 1985 when you were coming out of the draft. That's nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, you were a 10th round draft pick, which we've talked about on the show, would have been what I was now as an undrafted free agent. My signing bonus was like $7,500, so $17,500 back in the mid 1980s. That's a good chunk of change.
Yeah, and my first contract was $62,500. So it was, I mean, I felt like I was rich. You know, 62,500. What's the minimum now for a rookie? 600,000-700,000. I mean, and I don't say that out of jealousy. It's the way time moves on. I get it. But yeah, 10th rounder, so wouldn't even been in the draft. Got 17.5. I didn't make over 100,000 until my fourth year in the league.
But this is
fourth
sad.
year in the league was 110.
But that's sad because it's like, we're like, oh, time moves on back. That wasn't that long ago. This is like, you know, the memes you see now where it's like, why can't millennials own a home? And it's like, oh, well, that's why.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast this has all changed with the NFL in terms of a television viewing product that would flood everyone's pockets with money. And, Dad, I guess that's a good segue, the television viewing product portion of things, to what's going on with the kickoff now. Because as Devin Hester is going into the Hall of Fame, who has arguably the most famous kickoff moment of my lifetime, as a rookie in the NFL returning the opening kickoff of the freaking Super Bowl for a touchdown against the Indianapolis Colts, the flashbulb play that everybody thinks about when they dream of making the Super Bowl as kids, he was there to immortalize on the same day they were debuting the new kickoff that we had seen proliferated at the minor league levels of our, or let's just say the lower professional leagues of the NFL and the XFL and the UFL and the AFL and all that stuff. That debuted last night. What did you think? First look at it, Dad. For anyone that had missed it, the lines of each team now line up about 5 yards apart. No one can move until the ball is received. It's back down on the receiving team's side of the field. You are incentivized to try and kick the ball into the field of play. So a true touchback into the end zone takes the ball out to the 30 now. If the ball hits before that and rolls into the end zone, then it only comes out to the 20. There's going to be a bunch of other small rule machinations that I'm sure everyone gets used to. But the idea, again, is take a few of the insane collisions out of the play that had produced more concussions and violent moments than most anything else in football. So with that all in mind, Dad, what was your first impression of this new version of the kickoff?
Well, my first impression was your mother already texted me and said it was a Camaro IROC Z. So I had to get the car right.
She sent a picture, and it's sick, by the way.
No wonder it got stolen.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. She helped me drive to Houston. One year in it. She got pulled over twice on the trip. Not once, but twice.
Lead foot.
As I was in the passenger seat, yeah. So I had to get the car right. I saw on Twitter after the first kickoff, people are just, I hate it. All kind of opinions about it after one. I'm like, I'm going to let it breathe a little bit. I'm happy it's a play again because 21% of the time you had returns. So 79% of the time you had touchback. So it was a non-play. By far a non-play. So you start the game off with all this hype and then let alone kickoffs during the game, and it's not a play. So let's make it a play again. So it is a play again. Now, there was nothing special. The furthest one was returned to the 32. Few of them were returned to the 26 1-yard pass where the old touchback was, the 25. So you didn't go wow at the returns. The setup was a little different because the kicker and the return guys are the only ones that can move as the kicking team is on the opposing team 40 and the return team lines up between the 30 and 35. And it's like freeze tag until the ball is caught. But I'm fine with it to let it see how it expands. Let it see, because they're not going to show anything in this game if there are special team coaches out there trying to think of innovative ways to do things to gain an advantage. But as Matt Eberflus even said, it was advantage kicking team last night. He said it looked like the receiving team, that the players had trouble staying on the blocks, which are starting just 5 yards from one another. Had trouble staying on him, and the kicking team, he thought, won most of those battles. So while it didn't produce any big plays, it was still a play. It will produce big plays. You will see long runs. You probably will see returns for touchdowns. So I'm happy that it is a play again in football instead of just like the extra point when it was at the 2-yard line. It was 98, 99% automatic, and then they moved it back. Now there's a chance you're going to a higher percentage chance you could miss it than when it was at the 2-yard line. So it adds a little more intrigue. So I'm just happy there's a play again for a kickoff return.
And I saw Mina Kimes tweet this last night. We just flashed it too. What we saw last night, like most other things in the preseason right now, a lot of coaches holding their cards. We all know this. Whether it's the practices that are open to the public or what you're going to see in a preseason game, it's all very vanilla base stuff. They're not going to bust out the plays that are actually going to help them win a lot of games until we get to those games. And I'd imagine for special teams coordinators, and this is what Mina pointed out, most of them are withholding the more creative approaches to this that we're going to see because Dad, remember, that was part of the sell from guys like our buddy Sam Schwartzstein, who helped design a lot of this stuff, that, hey, you had coaches in those other professional leagues using plays on that, guys running counter, guys running things that more closely resembled offensive plays because of that proximity that you mentioned, and we saw none of that last night. Last night was basically dropping back in punt or kick return, but in a much shorter version of the field. So it was bland, it was very base level, and I have a feeling that was intentional. They're going to bust out the freaky stuff at some point, but it's certainly not going to be in preseason 1-1.
No, it's not. And as I said, it's a play again. At least you have to block and you have to tackle, so I'm happy for that. And you're right. Preseason, you're not going to see, just like offensively and defensively, you're going to see a lot of vanilla. You're not going to see anything crazy. So there'll be more excitement to it. But as I said, it's a play. And to me, that's the bottom line, is they found a way to make it a play. Now, like most things that are new, you find the loopholes. You find, okay, where can I take advantage of it? That's what special team coaches are going to be racking their brains trying to do.
I said, we always talk about the little freaks that make up all the specialty flavors of Oreos and Kit Kats and all that stuff. The original recipe little freaks are special teams coaches. Those guys just spend their time, because you got to think about it. They are technically a third of the game that we know occupies far less space than that. They are given far fewer opportunities to actually influence the outcome of the game. And so they're trying to make every one of those count. They're like back end of the roster guys that are trying to squeeze the most they can out of those couple of reps to show everyone, hey, you still need to keep paying me like this. So I'm excited for that, obviously, because like you said, it is more cracks at it. And as we know, whenever you're thinking about long runs that bust in the NFL, when you see more bodies around the line of scrimmage, what do we always say? Hey, you just need to get past that first level to pop one, and then it's off to the races. That's the same rule with this kickoff return. The one I am actually upset about, and the one I'm interested to see if special teams coordinators can come up with a workaround for, are the onside kick rules that resurfaced again for some reason the other day. One of those aggregator accounts decided to pop the rules again. And, Dad, it's just a reminder, this is a real Mark Jackson what happened to the game I love moment, where now with the onside kick in these new rules, you can only onside kick in the fourth quarter, you have to be down in the game, and you have to alert the other team that you are going to onside kick it. Now, it allows you to do the overload. Before, you had to keep everything even, and onside kicks, another one of those plays, Dad, that has become a veritable certainty. There is almost no chance for the opposing team or the kicking team to recover statistically at this point. So now they get to overload, they get to put 6 on one side and 4 on the other and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, my God, removing the total element of surprise. I understand some of the player safety concern elements to it, but man, just take the play out then. Give us what we've seen again in those other levels of football where it's like 4th and 18 and you actually have a legitimate shot of influencing the outcome of the game, not whatever this is about to be.
Yeah, this was a little troublesome for me as well. I don't recall, and I didn't see any statistics on the amount of players getting hurt on onside kicks. I don't recall that being an issue. So I don't know why you can't surprise onside kick or do it before the fourth quarter. Famously in the Super Bowl of New Orleans, doing it coming out in the second half. I mean, it makes everybody have to be on their toes. I'm a little. I guess I don't understand why they pigeonholed it so much to say fourth quarter, have to be down, you have to announce it because it's virtually a no play anyway. I mean, you get a play, but you never get the recovery. I mean, and now you've taken all the element of surprise out of it where you normally could get a recovery. So yeah, I don't understand that. So yeah, special team coaches will be thinking more about the kickoff return of doing something crazy because they don't have to spend time on the onside kick anymore because there's nothing to really surprise anybody or plan anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time, bandwidth, or reps you would really feel like you need to accommodate for that anymore, considering if you're getting to that point statistically, now maybe again, with the overload, some of the other stuff, you've always got a chance, and so they're going to spend some time on it. But man, while they're trying to give other plays a chance to actually impact the outcome of the game, it seems they've decided this one is dead and gone right now. So that's what we've got from the Hall of Fame game last night. We can certainly dive into some of the play at some point if we want to, like True Savages. But coming up next, we had an Olympic hero return to the platform that she is used to. Simone Biles stamps GOAT status and re-ups yet again next.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Let's jump into our Olympic recap with Liquid IV. If hydrating were an Olympic sport, you would win the gold. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code GOJO at checkout. So guys, medal count time. Team USA adding yesterday. They now have the most medals at the games with 39, as you can see there. So added 3 golds yesterday. They do still trail China in the gold medal department. So we got to work on that. China sitting there with 12. One of those golds for Team USA was secured yesterday by Simone Biles when she won the individual all-around gold medal. Her second, her first one being in 2016. So that's her 6th gold, 9th career medal at the Olympics. Most Olympic medals by a U.S. gymnast all time. Fellas, she was obviously already in the conversation for being a GOAT, but did this really just cement her legacy?
I think it had already been stamped, but man, this is a nice exclamation point for someone who, Dad, I don't know if you saw in the post-game press conference, she has the necklace that has the goat pendant on it. Like, she can't even deny what we all know. And I think that's a pretty cool level to get to, where most athletes are going to shirk that stuff off to the side, especially until they're done playing, single-minded focus, all that. But she's been so undeniably great. Even she's got to point out that she's the GOAT, because after yesterday, I don't know how you can watch that again in a sport where I don't even fully understand the scoring mechanics, and I don't even fully understand what goes in it. You can watch her and understand this looks different than everybody else, and nowhere was that more true than where she put the stamp on this gold medal on the floor routine that sealed all of it, that felt flawless even for a novice sitting there and watching the greatest to ever do it put it on wax.
Yeah, you sit there and you know, when you kind of parachute in on Olympics and you watch these things and you see a lot of the same routines and the same moves, then you watch her and it's different. It was the most difficult floor routine ever done. She has, I think, 6 moves named after her. So she not only, you know, is the best at it, but she does the most difficult moves as well. She seemed to need, was it Rebecca Andrade, who took silver?
Yeah.
I think she had, during the floor exercise, she stepped out. She stepped out of bounds, and that kind of opened the door for it kind of, Simone Biles was watching with Suni Lee and saw her step out and thought, okay, she started doing the math in her head, okay, of what I may need to win the all-around, and she obviously got it. I mean, she was incredible on it. But, yeah, I mean, she is the GOAT now. Still has the individuals, the vault, the beam, and the floor in individuals, so she can rack up more medals still as well. Yeah, she's undeniably the GOAT. It just, to your point, it just looks different with her doing it.
And it's crazy because she had the twisties. You know, so it's crazy that she came back out and was able to accomplish all this.
And she did say that this means even more because of what was in the background there. And obviously, you can zoom out even further, and with what USA Gymnastics has been through overall, with her being one of the athletes that stood up and faced her accuser in court when all this was going on, she's been asked to shoulder a burden that's bigger than just go out and accomplish at a high level for your sport. And she somehow still managed to get back to this moment. I mean, it was emotional, Dad, watching her and Suni Lee both go out there when the final score went up and everyone knew it was solidified. Suni Lee had already, in a very high pressure moment, come out and delivered on her floor routine and secured medaling at the very least. It was just going to be a matter of what order. And then the score goes final for Simone Biles. It solidifies that both of them were going to podium. And you see both of these women out there draped in the flag, holding it between them in a moment that seemed improbable for both of them, with Simone going back to the twisties, where she wasn't sure if mentally she was going to be comfortable going back out there in a sport where you can get maimed. Like this sport, I can't underscore enough. I watch most of these events and I'm terrified thinking about what they would do to me physically if you drop me in those situations. And then you had Suni Lee, who also dealt with a form of kidney disease in the lead up, that she wasn't sure, even inside a year ago, if she'd be able to compete in these games. And so for both of those women to find their way back in the way that they did and go out there and medal for their country had to be a tremendous moment for both of them that I'm sure they also immortalized on TikTok because they know what time it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you do have to think of the mental side of the sport and what it could do, because you rehearse and you go over all the physical moves over and over and over and over and over again, so you know them like the back of your hand, but you got to go out and produce. And while you're producing, if you make a mistake, how do you react and recover from that mistake from a mental side, let alone a physical side? So it can certainly take its toll, but congrats to them. I mean, for the gold and the bronze. And the all-around, like we said, we still have the individual events, but she deservedly is wearing the GOAT necklace.
Did you have any issue, because we talked about her husband, Jonathan Owens, was there. He was missing Bears training camp for a week. They gave him the time off to go over and watch his wife compete. One of the greatest to ever do it. And there were all those shots of him in the crowd earlier in the women's all-around team event, scoring in the stands that everyone was big on. But then he posted the picture with her after the team win, and he's wearing her gold medal. And a lot of people were up in arms about that. Dad, did you have any issue with him not having her wearing the medal in the picture the way that we saw? Because his support after he said all that stuff about the podcast, about not knowing who she was when they met, kind of became a subject of controversy for a lot of people.
Why do I care who has the medal on? They're a couple.
That's kind of where
I mean,
I'm at.
so
The patriarchy,
what? I mean,
that's why. No, I'm just
I mean,
kidding. I don't have a
anybody
problem.
who would comment and have an issue about that, look at your own life. When you're going to comment on somebody else and who they decide to put the gold medal on for a friggin' picture. Are you kidding
I think
me?
it was probably like, he was like, this is sick. I'm never going to have one of these. I want to touch it. Like, it's cool.
It's one of those things where I truly think this is like the Aaron Rodgers effect, where because he said that stuff on the podcast, now everything he does comes through that lens for some people, and he's always going to be the subject of scrutiny. It's still wild that he was able to miss a week of training camp to go over there.
Oh,
cool
my
move by
gosh.
the Bears. Certainly like unprecedented in what we've seen. We had those videos from Hard Knocks years ago when the Lions were on. I'm forgetting the backup quarterback's name now, but his wife was competing in the games, and they set up the TV monitor for him to watch, and all the team went in there, and it was awesome. But this certainly the step beyond that for, and we don't know for her Olympic future. I mean, Simone Biles made the joke that their nickname was the Golden Girls because she's 27 competing in a sport that tends to be a young woman's game. She won her first all-around gold back in 2016 in Rio when she was 19 years old. So as she's talked about, her longevity also a part of that GOAT status, because that's not something that we normally see there. I did want to give a quick shout out to Silver, by the way, Rebecca Andrade, who was phenomenal from Brazil throughout the entirety of this, and it got talked about some during the team portion of things. But Rebecca Andrade is basically Brazil's Simone Biles. She's considered largely the greatest gymnast in that country's history. And when you read about her backstory, growing up in a favela out there, having her mom be a single mother raising 8 children who would forego her bus pass and the mom would walk to work so that Rebecca and her brother could walk to the gym where she would train. It's the kind of situation and circumstances we always talk about most people aren't supposed to make it out of, and yet now she's here pushing Simone Biles every step of the way for gold. I mean, Simone on the uneven bar had a little bit of a falter by her standards that kind of opened up the window for things to go for Rebecca Andrade, who was nipping at her heels the entire time. And to your point, it took that minor step out on the floor routine to really make sure that Simone had the opening to go back and seal the deal. So she pushed it every step of the way for someone that represented her country incredibly well through this process.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of times it's the stories of the Olympics. You see the Olympic events, and it doesn't matter what event. You hear stories like that, of a mom with 8 kids and foregoing the bus pass so the kids can have the bus pass to get to practice. But and a lot of these athletes work other jobs. So to me, it is the incredible stories of their success stories of making it to the Olympics, let alone not whether you medal or not, just making it to the Olympics. To me, that's some of the best parts of these sports that you rarely watch. You watch when the Olympics are on, and then some you catch briefly during the Olympics. But you still watch them, and all these people still have stories to make it to the Olympics. That to me is some of the best stuff.
It's why our eyes have been glued since the start of the games, and it's what made this accomplishment for Simone Biles and Suni Lee even sweeter. Like you mentioned, the stories of what they overcame to get back to this stage. For Simone Biles to become the oldest woman to win an Olympic all-around since the first winner of the women's all-around back in 1952. Congratulations to everyone involved. Coming up next, we're going to head back out to Los Angeles Chargers camp. That's a fine. To check in on their star quarterback and a little bit of concern starting to grow next.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Jesse Cofield here, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. And guys, we've talked about it a lot. One thing you gotta avoid in preseason is injury. Duh. Chargers, not so lucky, okay? Justin Herbert has been diagnosed with plantar fascia in his right foot, putting him in a boot for 2 weeks. So the good news is, guys, he should be ready for the beginning of the season. But not ideal for Jim Harbaugh as the offense is basically brand new. So what do we think? I mean, is there going to be like a learning curve at the beginning of the season now for Herbert and this new offense?
I mean, Dad, the easy joke is how hard is it to hand the ball off, because that's all Greg Roman really wants to do is tote the rock. And quite honestly, that might be all that they're equipped to do right now, given the weapons in that room. But no, this is certainly not ideal, because we've talked about stuff relative to preseason game reps with Caleb Williams and these guys, Aaron Rodgers not playing in the preseason, all these quarterbacks talking about that. We're talking about now not getting reps day to day for the offense that you're installing. And Jim Harbaugh was able to kind of wash it away, saying, hey, he's still going to have plenty to do in the training room and in the meeting room and with his teammates off the field. But there's no doubt this is a step back for a team that certainly, A, wants to have him on the field to do this, but also didn't have to deal with the thought of Justin Herbert injured until last season, when all of a sudden that popped up really for the first time in his career. I think he had started, 62 games in a row originally before he started dealing with injury. That was a guy that felt like a bit of an Iron Man, especially because of his build. And now you're already going into the season worried about if this might pop up again for the guy that you gave a ton of money to.
Well, that's the issue to me. Missing the time now, yeah. Is it important to get the time? Yes, because it's a new offense. Yes, I get all that, but it's still from Justin Herbert's side, it should be just fine. But in the concept of the whole offense, I get it. But to me, it's also about, does this rear its head again? Do you tear it again? Do you injure it again? Do you strain it again? And do you miss more time? You got to really make sure this thing is healed up. And, you have time until the beginning of the season, but if it's 2 weeks in a boot and then you're slowly rehabbing from there, next thing you know, it's week one. So that's what you're fighting, but you have to have him completely healthy. And that's probably a bigger worry to me than him missing the time now is the thought of re-injuring and to make sure that it's completely healed before he gets back on the field.
I was always interested because Greg Roman, we think of that offense and the quarterbacks that have inhabited it in the past, Lamar Jackson, and then before that in his prior stop in San Francisco with Jim Harbaugh, where they had quarterbacks that were more mobile between Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Justin Herbert's a good athlete. He's a better athlete than he probably gets credit for. I don't think there was going to be a ton of designed run stuff in his future, but if there was, that probably goes out the window with this. But, Dad, he is still a quarterback that his mobility is a huge asset for that team. And so you're right. If that affects it at all, for a guy who kind of like the Josh Allen situation in Buffalo, quite honestly, they let a bunch of those guys go on offense this offseason to try and retain the defensive talent in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and some of the other high-priced guys that we knew were a part of what Jim Harbaugh was taking over. And I'm sure at least part of the reduction in receiver talent on that team was the thought of, well, Justin Herbert is one of those quarterbacks in our estimation that can offset and elevate that if given the opportunity. And so you need him firing at 100% or else this whole thing could go boom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, without a doubt. He is, listen, the quarterback's the most important position anyway, but now in a new offense, though you're right, in a Greg Roman offense could be a little more running, even though you have the arm of Herbert you want to lean on. It's certainly not the best to have him miss time. Again, I'm not as concerned for him, maybe the timing a little bit, especially of new players in that offense, but to me, it's about re-injuring. But it's a setback you don't want. I mean, you definitely don't want it. You don't want it any time, but when you have a new head coach, new assistant coaches, new system going in, new players going into it, any kind of disruption is a bad disruption.
So 2 things to note. One, the Chargers' odds haven't changed since this news came out. And second of all, what is the treatment for plantar fascia? Is it just like mad foot massages? Like what, you just got to go in the treatment room and get a foot massage every day?
I'm going to be honest, Daddy. Yeah, I've never injured my plantar fascia. I only really learned what it was much later in life. It essentially is like the sausage casing for all the stuff in your foot that I just know because I massage it out with a lacrosse ball below my foot most every morning so that I can function properly as just a 34-year-old adult living my life. For these guys, it's obviously a lot more important and certainly potentially painful when you're asked to do the kind of cutting and planning that these guys are. So I don't know what the recovery looks like.
Yeah, I don't either. I would imagine, Jesse, you're right. There would be some foot massage. Probably not the relaxing foot massage you would think of. It's probably one that's going to make you go through the roof a little bit. To a little bit of
where they bust out one of those tools. Anytime you see them bust out a plastic tool, I remember I pulled a groin when I was getting ready for my pro day. And the same thing, like, all right, you know what? We'll just go here and buff it out, ice and rest for a few days. And then they pull out this plastic thing and they just start grating it over every striation of your muscles. And I'm pretty sure I saw the face of God in that moment, that or I was just losing oxygen enough to where I was blacking out.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, you end up going through the roof a little bit in the recovery, but I'm sure there's obviously lots of different recovery and medical situations for this. But yes, the massage will be one of them, and I believe a tool will be used in one of them, which means it will be painful. Though, being the boot, a lot of the times not moving it. Who knows? I've never had this one either. Of all the different surgeries I had, this was or injuries. This was not one that I had. I don't know if I didn't move fast enough to hurt my plantar fascia. Maybe that's it.
I think this is one of those moments where it's kind of like you always said, you can't pull fat in this situation. It's hard to hurt this when you're not revving the engine as high as some of these guys. Other big injury news from yesterday, Dad, and I'm curious how much this stands out on your radar. DeAndre Hopkins coming up with a little bit of a knee sprain the other day. And now I've heard various people talk about how long they think he might be out for this, but him being out in a wide receiver room that got a little bit of a revamp this offseason, Calvin Ridley that they brought over from inside the division in Jacksonville, Tyler Boyd, the former Cincinnati slot receiver, to go along with Treylon Burks, who while DeAndre's out is going to take the uptick in reps in camp, their former top pick back from 2022. How much does this concern you for an offense that went all in to try and find out what they've got in their second-year quarterback, Will Levis?
Well, they did. They brought in, DeAndre's 32. So, it's kind of like Adam Thielen being the main guy out in Carolina at like 32 years old. You want to bring in some of the younger players around them and more weapons for Will. So certainly DeAndre is an integral part of the offense, and it's going to hurt. I mean, if it's truly 4 to 6 weeks, now you're talking the beginning of the season, and then revving your engines back up to get in some kind of shape to play. So it could be a little while, and like you say, always injuries at the beginning of the year, and then when you come back you hurt something adjacent to that injury. It's always a tough one, but 4 to 6. But I do think they did build up around Will Levis, which was smart, something they needed to do to build a little more bit of a talent level around him. So you have him 4 to 6. You have Geno Smith out in Seattle with all of a sudden, it's like they're the NHL. It's like, he has a couple of injuries that they're not disclosing. We don't even know if they're upper body or lower body injuries, but a couple of injuries that he's dealing with, and he's in a day-to-day situation.
Because let me tell you what, like with they've got who's the backup quarterback? Sam Howell came over from D.C. as the backup quarterback now. But I'm with you. The DeAndre Hopkins injury, Will Levis and him seemed to have a good connection last year. There was that 3-touchdown game where it was just bleep it, DeAndre's down there somewhere. And he's always been a great contested catch guy. But to your point, there's other guys in that room that, especially in a new offense with Brian Callahan, could work. With Geno Smith, if he ain't out there, I have worries about this whole thing. Ryan Grubb coming in already, installing a new offense that technically puts him and Sam Howell in the same case. They're both learning something very new. But Geno Smith on his best day is a markedly better quarterback than Sam Howell based on what we've seen so far. And with all those weapons there, I was buying Seahawks stock under Mike McDonald's new crew. With the way all those pieces fit with what we had seen Ryan Grubb do last year in Washington. I talked about this with Fitz the other day. It all seemed to line up where you had similar types that what he had in the last couple of seasons in an offense that was a certified laser light show in Seattle, Washington. And now, I don't know, but knock on wood, because I would love to see that thing go full throttle and we may not get the chance because of injury. Coming up next, that same thing might be true for one of the all-time greats in Major League Baseball next.
Back, everybody. Here at Gojo and Golic, we have become your go-to spot for all nepotism news for obvious reasons. You guys know what I'm talking about. So let's head to Baltimore for a little Nepo news, okay? Jackson Holliday, Orioles' top prospect, was called back up to the league after a very lukewarm start to his career at the beginning of the year, and he capitalized on his moment, okay? Hitting a grand slam for his first career home run. Let's go, baby. Pretty special moment as the Orioles start their run to the postseason. Now, guys, Jackson, obviously the son of former MLB All-Star Matt Holliday. We like this little Nepo news, right, guys?
Yeah, it's great. You know, nepotism doesn't hit quite as hard when you're the number one overall pick. That feels like one of those spots where it's a little bit of stolen valor, Nepo baby stuff, quite honestly, from Jackson Holliday, but certainly still happy for him because it is listen, the most pressure he's facing is being a number one overall pick and having your father have been, you know, someone that excelled in your field before. It certainly puts eyes on you in a different way from a young age. Like, I'm sure he dealt with that a lot more coming up as a kid where everyone identifies you as so-and-so's son, and that's kind of how you deal with it there. Now at this point, and especially coming back after being sent back down to the minors this season, Dad, that's the mental battle that he's fighting right now. And you heard everyone saying that relief now of coming back up and maybe not trying to grab the wheel as tight this time around. He had excelled and burned his way through the minors so much before that first start and then came out and kind of, you know, struggled at the plate a little bit, got sent back down to clear his head. So happy to see him get out there, have that moment, and hopefully it can be part of banking those moments that allows him to go and be exactly what the Orioles expect him to be.
Yeah, a lot of hope when he's called up early. April 10th, to be in the bigs, and in the 10 games goes 2 for 34 with 18 strikeouts and gets sent back down. That had to be not only a physical mess but a mental grind as well. to not succeed there. So now to get called back up, get your first home run. And a lot of it had to do with some of the trades the Orioles made. Holiday's playing second base, naturally a shortstop playing second base now, but part of that young core of players to try and finish off a year where, they were at the top of the division last year.
Exactly, and they're tied at the top of the division right now with the Yankees heading down the stretch. So, yeah, they're hoping he can slot in there at second base and try and make some things happen for him. They made a bunch of prudent moves at the deadline. Again, it was a year where there was no real banner marquee addition at the deadline for them. They go out there and add Zach Eflin. They also get Trevor Rogers over there as well. Eloy Jimenez comes in, although injury's been an issue for him during his time with the White Sox, which, man alive, the vibes, I've never seen vibes as bad as what's going on the other side of Chicago right now. That's like sad for everybody involved that it's gotten to that point and devolved to that level for the White Sox. So shout out to Eloy for making it out of the struggle there. Our former producer at ESPN, Devin Kane, day one Eloy Jimenez fan. I remember when we had him on the show back in the day, so always happy to see that for our guy, and certainly always happy to see it for fellow Nepo baby Jackson Holiday. So congratulations to him on coming and making it out of the struggle. But Jesse, we got to get to the real struggle and news out of Major League Baseball yesterday here. Another year come and gone where Mike Trout ends up getting shut down due to injury before the end of the season. And unfortunately, this might feel like our future at this point with one of the greatest players of my lifetime.
Yeah, we found out that they're shutting him down after a setback during his rehab. So he had that surgery on a torn meniscus May 3rd. Now officially not going to be returning this season. Major bummer. We've all been like clamoring and joking about how we got to get him out of Anaheim, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So since 2021, he's only played in 44.7% of the Angels games. That number is going to drop to 41% by the end of the season as he's been shut down now. 3-time MVP, 11-time All-Star, probably still heading to the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, I just read that off. That's crazy, obviously. Yeah. But it got us thinking about some of the all-time, like, if they had stayed healthy guys. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of a career would they have had? Who's at the top of that kind of list for you guys?
Well, it's interesting, Dad, because it falls into a couple of camps for this, right? Because Mike Trout, as Jesse mentioned, already has a firmly stamped Hall of Fame career and, like, argument for best player of an era. For the 2010s, no one was better than Mike Trout for such a long stretch, whether it's, WAR or all the other ways that you want to mention it, the hardware and the 3 MVPs. Like, he's got everything you want and was that dude. He's lived a full Hall of Fame career already. And so it does fall into a couple camps where it's the guys that had prolific careers that were cut short. Think Gale Sayers, certainly think Bo Jackson.
Right.
And then there's the guys, and I think the closest comp that I can find for him is what we've seen with Tiger Woods, where it's, hey, Tiger's already considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest golfer of all time. You can debate it or not with Jack Nicklaus based on the major wins, but with the impact that he's had, no one's doubting that. But with how young his body started to betray him, both in terms of normal injuries and then the car accident, it does feel like we got robbed of potentially even more. And I think that's the closest thing I can think of for Mike Trout is, hey, this was already so great, but man, if he was able to string together a few more healthy years, even on an Angels team that never sniffs the playoffs while he's there, you still probably felt like there was more left in the tank for this guy.
Yeah, because there was such a great career leading up to it. I mean, as Jesse mentioned, 41% of playing time since 21. He's only in the 6th year of a 12-year deal.
Yeah.
Making $37 million a year for the foreseeable future. I mean, oh my God. I mean, you want to talk about just from a monetarily a horrible contract. 6 more years of it. So, but yeah, I could see that, like the Hall of Fame career up to the point of the injuries, and then just seeing how much further you could go. Because you're right, Bo Jackson was cut short. Gale Sayers was cut short. Mike Trout wasn't really cut short. He's had a pretty magnificent career.
Right.
That is obviously starting to get stamped down because of injuries. So I actually like the Tiger Woods comparison more, because if you look at a shortened career, it would be Bo Jackson, it would be Gale Sayers. Those would be the two where you wondered if they were able to go more, just how much more they could accomplish.
Yeah, because I mean, you also look at careers that injury affected at a high level, and the late Bill Walton, who we most recently lost, when you think of all the back injuries for one of the greatest college players of all time, going to the NBA and having to deal with a lot of that. Derrick Rose, I can think of on a lesser scale, because Derrick Rose isn't a player in the pantheon of the ones we've mentioned here, but after that 2011 MVP season that probably shouldn't have been, the knee injuries that robbed us of such an explosive player there. For Mike Trout, again, finished in the top 2 in the AL MVP voting 7 times in his first 8 full seasons, obviously winning 3 of those. His 73 Fangraph wins above replacement. That's what I mentioned from 2012 to 2020, where he won 3 MVPs, 8 Silver Sluggers, and 8 All-Star trips. Blew everyone away. Max Scherzer, the next closest, with just 50.4. So he was the prolific player of that time, and there were people talking about greatest of all-time trajectory, and that part, Dad, feels like we've stubbed our toe a bit now. Obviously, the Angels, we've talked about a team that lost Shohei Ohtani this last offseason, and in general, going all the way back to, and I think this is the part that sucks, is, Mike Trout puts out this statement where he says, I understand there are probably fans incredibly frustrated with this now. Not as frustrated they should be with the entire Angels organization and the way they've mishandled 2 of the greatest players of our lifetime coming through their organization and making nothing of it, but saying, I hope to get back out there. And there's the expectation that with the timing of this injury, Dad, that was something he had been trying to work out going back through his minor league assignment and thought he was getting back before this thing re-teared. There's the expectation he'll be ready to go for the start of next season, but with the way that these all continue to mount, unfortunately, past injury is the greatest predictor of future injury, and that's what you're going to constantly worry about for a player into his 30s, but for someone that seems so badly to want to do this, he's not a guy that's just resting on the laurels of that contract. We saw the joy he still has pop up in the World Baseball Classic the other year, where he got a chance to actually compete in a championship environment and really seemed to love that. That part of it's the shame, because we know this is also incredibly frustrating for a competitor of this caliber.
Well, he wants to play so badly that you just fear injury again. You're right, that he just goes 1,000% all the time to play, that you're holding your breath every time he bats, every time he runs, that something is going to get hurt. He's just gone through too much for you to rely on the fact that he's going to make it through a season healthy. Unfortunately, we're at the point where we're assuming something is going to happen rather than he's going to make it through a season healthy. And that's a shame for a guy that's had such an incredible career.
Honestly, Tyron Smith is another name that fits perfectly in this. Hall of Fame career, going to wear a gold jacket, but now at this point in the twilight, you unfortunately have to build that into the model. Coming up next, we have been previewing the NFC all week, going division by division. We're going to go for a little bit of review with our friend and former NFL tackle Marshall Newhouse joining us next. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Hour number 2 here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield hanging out in the studio in Boston. Plenty of great stuff still coming up today. Spencer Hall, greatest college football writer in America, going to stop by and help us look ahead at the 2024 season that's been increasingly harder and harder in the last couple of years to get ready for. Again, I am not complaining about the new structures of the sport. Change is inevitable in this machine, and it's all part of the process. But the constant transfer portal stuff does make it very difficult to go and analyze rosters that are constantly in flux. And so got to wait until about this time, really right until you get towards the season, where you can look around and go, all right, everyone's going to be here. We don't have to move too much. Let's make it happen. So we'll get into that. And again, I want Spencer Hall to get me caught up on rugby, because after watching the women's rugby sevens team win bronze, I feel like this can be part of our future. We have been previewing divisions all week long here, though. Really the last couple of weeks. We did the AFC last week. We did the NFC divisions this week. And so to take a look back at that, and maybe, I don't know, Marshall Newhouse, 11-year NFL veteran, Super Bowl champion, kind enough to join us here and help us with some of the NFL stuff. You got any rugby familiarity? Were you a guy that was into that before, or are you just watching the Olympics like the rest of us?
I actually was. I had a close friend growing up, who played sevens rugby, played at actually University of Oklahoma. And so I followed his career, and I was really into it, but it wasn't on TV a lot. It was hard to find. And just seeing now the women's stage in the Olympics is pretty cool. I think people are realizing that there's a difference between normal rugby and sevens. Sevens is a little more fast-paced. We're the America that has ADHD. I think it's more conducive to scoring. And so it's a fun game to watch.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's been really good. Where 3-on-3 basketball hasn't quite taken off, fast-paced, but we're just bad at it right now. And I think we as Americans, in addition to the
problem
ADHD,
is you're not calling it 3x3. They need you to call it 3x3 for some reason. So
really?
Really?
Oh,
have you not heard
God,
on the broadcast? Yeah. They're like forcing it down our throats. Call it 3x3. I'm like, listen, I don't need that much right now.
Listen,
no,
we've had a very tortured relationship with the idea of X in general, which I'm also never going to call the other thing, not even if there's a fire. So 3x3, I'm sorry, fellas, it's fetch. It ain't going to happen. Dad, you can make me do a lot of things. I will respect the sanctity of someone else's sport when I'm coming into their house, but 3x3 basketball is never going to happen in my life.
No. It's 3-on-3. I'd have a hard time with that as well. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Glad we've all established that we're firmly anti-3x3. Now that we have taken the important issues and gotten those out of the way, Marshall, what we brought you here to help with, we're taking a look back at the NFC overall heading into the season. And it's probably easiest to start at the top. We know the 49ers, heavy favorites overall to win the Super Bowl, heavy favorites to win this division. I've seen you talking about Trent Williams a lot on Mina Kimes' podcast, the Mina Kimes Show, certainly on social media. How vital do you think this contract negotiation is in the absence of Trent Williams for this team heading into this important season?
Listen, we laud Kyle Shanahan for all the right reasons, for the things he can do with the pieces that they have. He is, to me, the puzzle piece that makes this kind of crumble if he's not around. And so I think Trent Williams has recognized that leverage, and at his age, at tackle, still playing at an elite level, is recognizing, hey, this might be my last chance to really get a check. So the Niners are kind of in a between a rock and a hard place. But we've seen already in camp, you've seen, clips, and then we see last year with this film study what happens when he's not in there for this offense. There's fun stuff where like we put him in motion and we tell him to go kill someone, but the day-to-day, down-to-down things that Trent Williams does really allows Christian McCaffrey to do what he needs to do, allows Brock Purdy the time he needs to develop in this quarterback we think might be deserving of a new big contract. And so he's a guy that they have to prioritize, and it's just difficult because the money's running out. Even though the cap's going up, they have a lot of guys that want to get paid. But to me, ultimately, Trent Williams is at the top or the most important on their team.
Yeah, as far as contracts are concerned, it's about leverage, and he has the leverage, and they haven't even, and you talk about money to be paid, they know they got to have money aside for their quarterback by next offseason if they're going to do something next offseason. So the money's going to have to be out there, so they have to try and show some fiscal responsibility. But I agree, he's a guy they got to have out on that field. So if they're at their full strength, have him on the field, and even get Brandon Ayuk playing as well, how much are they ahead of everybody else in the NFC in your mind? What's the step down to the next team?
Well, I mean, we saw last year, obviously teams are different from year to year, but it would not have surprised anyone if they beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl. They were, I mean, going into that game, there were plenty of people that picked them, and rightfully so. They match up position by position with the other best team in the NFL. And so as far as the NFC is concerned, it's them, it's Detroit, and it might be Green Bay creeping up there, and maybe Philly, who might be seeing a resurgence, but they're still at the crop of the class. And so, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're just like, how do I not crash this Ferrari that I've built? Because if we do things the right way, if we stay healthy, we should be there at the NFC Championship game playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl down in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that's the overwhelming expectation for them. We could quibble about certain things, right? Defensively, Eric Armstead no longer on that defensive line, who was an important piece for a run defense that at times struggled last year and got beat up. They had to bring over Chase Young for an influx of pass rush opposite Nick Bosa. But again, this is all relative to, hey, you've got all pros all over this roster. You've got plenty of incredible veteran pieces. They're going to be in the dance. You mentioned that next step down of that group there. I know we've all been focused on Dallas, and we can certainly get to the situation with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and this team. They're the big shiny object, but Philadelphia is the interesting one. They started off 10-1 last year, like we know, before the bottom dropped out, especially defensively. I want to go to offense, though. They're losing a key leader on that team overall, and certainly a key cog in what they do up front with Jason Kelce. They're bringing him in. Cam Jurgens, who was handpicked in part by Jason Kelce to be his replacement there, now steps in. How difficult is that transition for that group up front being made, losing the leadership voice in the middle of that line in a season where the offense is also changing drastically?
Listen, it is big, and to understate it would just be doing themselves a disservice, but it's not something they can't overcome. I mean, you have Lane Johnson there, Jordan Mailata, who are bookend tackles, and Cam Jurgens is plenty good as a center. He's just got a different skill set than Jason Kelce, who, mind you, has maybe the most unique skill set in center history. He was doing things that most centers could not do outside of the tush push and his just warthog mentality. So I think they'll figure it out. There might, camp is going to be vital that they're in right now. They're grinding through it. Cam Jurgens is trying to figure out what his leadership needs to be, because there's a vacuum when a guy like Jason Kelce leaves. We talk about the physical stuff, their performance on the field, but Jason Kelce was their unabashed leader. He was a guy that did pregame speeches. When they weren't clicking all cylinders, he's the guy on the sideline who's bringing the offense together to figure things out. So who becomes that guy? Does Jalen Hurts become more vocal, more than he was? Does Lane just kind of big brother, big father the entire offense and kind of drag them along? So I think the leadership part will be a big deal for them. I think the play on the field will get figured out. Cam Jurgens they're going to figure out their A blocks. They're going to figure out their back blocks. They'll decide if he can pull like Jason Kelce. Very few people ever can. But all the logistic stuff, the actual on-field things will get figured out. There's enough talent there. Now with Saquon running behind you, a running back that can make you look good when things aren't perfect, that I like where the offense is going to be. They just got to figure out their stride.
We mention a lot of the top teams talk about the issues with San Francisco, with Ayuk and with Trent Williams. The Cowboys with Dak, with CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley going to Philly, and Jordan Love getting the deal with the Packers. We don't talk much about Detroit. Detroit's sitting there, second in the conference to San Francisco, didn't make a lot of changes, went the cornerback route in the draft, tried to solidify that secondary. Is it weird or fair to say they're kind of flying under the radar as one of the top teams in the NFC?
It's unbelievable to say that, but yes, because they went from Dan Campbell was new on the block. He's chugging 800 milligrams of coffee every morning. He was a character. And then we find out, oh, he's for real and they're for real. And so, they lose the NFC Championship, honestly, where they had multiple opportunities to win the game and could have.
Yep.
And then they bring back Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator. So they are absolutely set up to do whatever they need to do. You've got an ascending Green Bay team. You've got a maybe ascending Chicago team in their division, but they're going to be right up there with anybody else. And we now, I think, collectively believe that Dan Campbell is going to figure things out. That team assumes a piece of him. And, he's the most authentic, genuine coach that I think we can remember in a long time. And the city rallies behind him. The guys rally behind him. And so, yeah, I mean, if for some crazy reason, Detroit's just like a little bit of an afterthought, they're just going to be an afterthought that wins 12, 13, 14 games.
Well, they're kind of the team we always talk about where the teams that are making huge splash trades in the offseason are usually not the better teams in the league. Usually the better teams in the league are so stocked, they're making moves around the periphery. And for Detroit, it was certainly adding to the secondary this offseason, which they did a good job of. Pass rusher could have been another place they maybe added a guy and didn't, but DJ Reader on that defensive line next to Aleem McNeil, who was already such an important, impactful player for them. You saw when he missed time due to injury down the stretch of the season and then got back late in the regular season into the postseason, all to compliment Aiden Hutchinson, who looks every bit like the top pick that he was billed to be coming out of Michigan. He's been great, but then offensively, they're just re-signing all their own guys. They said, yeah, Jared Goff and Ben Johnson work great together. We'll re-sign him. Both our tackles in Sewell and Decker, awesome. The offensive line, the star of the show, we're going to re-sign him. Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it doesn't usually have to be sexy for the teams that are maintaining their time near the top. But I think for this team, because it's built in a way that maybe people didn't always agree with and now hasn't had any of that sex-selling move in the offseason, they do get to kind of sit there and be in the place that every coach loves to be, under the radar and untalked about heading into the year. Marshall, I want to talk about the deepest division in this conference because I think it's overwhelmingly the NFC West. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, but looking at this conference in particular, going from the favorites in the 49ers to a Rams team that I think could be a top 5 offense this year in the NFL, to even now Geno Smith and some of this very nebulous injury news coming out of camp there is a little bit worrisome, but Mike Macdonald seems like the kind of coach that along with Ryan Grubb on offense can come in and maximize these pieces in year one. Am I crazy for buying that this could be the one division in the conference that could actually put 3 teams into the playoffs?
I think they're a little bit ahead of the NFC North right now, but I think you're spot on. I was just kind of doing a little dive on Arizona. Listen, if Kyler Murray is like 80% of the quarterback we think he could be, to me, the floor for an NFL team with a top 10 elite quarterback is 10 wins. So if Arizona is competitive and wins 10 games, not to mention we assume Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the plug-and-play pro that he seems like he's going to be, the defense has some issues, but we're just talking about competitiveness and adding to this division. I think by far it's the deepest division. NFC North is nipping at their heels. But yeah, Mike Macdonald, I think it'll take a little time for the things in Seattle defensively to kind of click. He runs a very complicated scheme. When they get it installed and people understand that as a language that they can speak, it's the nightmare to prepare for. I mean, the pressures they bring from all over the place, they make you prepare for another thing on top of what you're already preparing for through the week. Like in Baltimore, we just hey, they have multiple packages that if we get in third down, we've got a whole nother thing that we've got to think about as far as where is their simulated pressure coming from. So I think they've got some talent to continue to build in Seattle on defense, but Mike Macdonald, I think is going to be the guy for the job. And then, all they need out of Geno is just he doesn't have to be a superhero. I think he has had, we're talking under the radar, just steady season after steady season after he got out of this whirlpool of quicksand that was the New York Jets. And, I think he's making an incredible career for himself, and they're competitive. I absolutely believe that Geno Smith is going to continue to ascend. He even says it in the way he talks, and that's so important. We talk about football players and high-level athletes having this confidence. He believes in himself that he's still got room to grow, and that's scary for that division. And, the Niners and then the Rams. The Rams, we talked about a year ago, is Sean McVay going to retire? Does Matthew Stafford need to get traded, and should they tank? And then they come out and they hit people in the mouth. They find a guy in the 5th round in Puka Nacua, and they're competitive every week. And it's just like, okay, what were we thinking? This is still Sean McVay. If he cares, if he's in it, he and Les Snead, they're going to figure things out. So, head to toe, it's a really competitive division. They're going to make, we always looked at the schedule when it came out. All right, in the same conference, you rotate divisions that you play. And I remember when they had Harbaugh, when they had, the old NFC West of Seattle and San Francisco, we're like, oh man, this is going to be a tough one. We got to play a division this year, especially on the road. And they're going to be someone that teams want to try to avoid because it's just a murderer's row.
Yeah, I think that is what getting back to that old feeling of the NFC West that you're talking about, where it's also an incredibly physical division for all the reasons that you just mentioned there as well, especially the turn the Rams made last year. Dad, I want to make the Rams our cash it or trash it team. Cash it or trash it is presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Dad, the Los Angeles Rams over-under win total at DraftKings Sportsbook is 8.5 right now. Are you cashing or trashing that the Rams go over on that win total this year with all of that potential on a healthy offense combined with a young defense tasked with replacing Aaron Donald?
I think I am gonna cash the over on that. I'm a little more worried about the defensive side of the ball after the post Aaron Donald. And obviously, if they can score points, to be in a scoring game, back and forth game with opponents, but that would be the side of the ball I'd be a little bit concerned with the defensive side. But I'll cash the over on that.
I'm going to cash the over on that as well. I am incredibly Rams-pilled going into this season. Again, maybe it's just because they run the piss out of Duo, and I saw them give our sweet Notre Dame son, Kyron Williams, the home that he deserves in a backfield that truly values what he brings to the table, both as a runner and as a pass protector. So, Marshall, I might be a little blinded by that, where I'm overlooking, hey, that defensive line is incredibly young. Whether you look at Byron Young, obviously Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, their top picks from this year along the defensive front, but I look in that room like Ernest Jones at linebacker. I was out at Rams practice the other day. That guy's got the juice, like green dot kind of juice, looks like the leadership voice on that defense and showed up in the picture all the time last year. So I'd probably go over and cash that win total as well. Where are you at on that team?
The thing that we have to realize is that Aaron Donald was such a force, and it can't be overstated. He's just an all-time great, that there's a vacuum when a guy like that leaves. Because you got to think about all of the guys around him who were pass rushers or, run defenders who got free rushes or one-on-ones all the time, because every time an offensive line came to the line, there's 4, 6, even 8 eyes on Aaron Donald. So they might have talented guys who I believe are ascending, but there's a vacuum when that guy decides to retire, and salute to him. Him getting out at this level. And I remember the interview on the pivot, he seemed so grounded and level-headed and ready for that moment. But the Rams have got to replace that, and I just don't know if you can right away. They'll have to figure out just a new ebb and flow of how they're going to get pressure. And you got to think, even in the run game, Aaron Donald accounted for multiple gaps because he took chances, and that's fine. They gave up some gashes because he took his chances. But then all the tackles for loss, just with a guard who's just like, his knees are shaking. It's like the 3-foot putt that you have to finish at the end of a round. It's like, I don't know what to do. His effect was so great. His gravity was so great. It's similarly to, I describe it in basketball terms, like Steph Curry's gravity. He's always attracting attention. And so what do guys look like without that gravitational force on the defensive line?
So real quick, we got less than a minute. If you were to pick a sleeper in the NFC, and I mean a team, with 4, 5, 6, 7 wins, who would it be? Because there's always that team that jumps up.
Ooh, sleeper. I think I like what Tampa Bay is doing. I really like what the Bucs are doing. Baker's got his giant mammoth franchise tackle signed for the long term, and this is a team that just beat Philadelphia in a playoff game. I think they have a lot of juice down there. They're feeling really good about where they are, and again, that division, we keep saying it. It feels like 8 years in running is up for grabs. There's just, without Sean Payton, without Drew Brees, that division is just, we're not sure who's ready to take it over. And why not Tampa Bay? So I like Baker Mayfield. I like the chip on his shoulder. And that team seems to really be poised to kind of take that next step.
Another one flying under the radar. Everyone wants to give it to the Falcons. Everyone even wants to talk about the Saints to an extent. And there's Tampa Bay just saying, hey, we won this thing last year, and kind of like that threat, and I'll do it again, the goofy meme. So lots to look forward to in this upcoming NFC season. Marshall, you're the best, man. We really appreciate the time. Thanks so much, and hopefully we'll talk to you a bunch more as the season gets going here for real.
Absolutely, fellas. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
All right, from the pros to, I guess, now it feels like semi-pro in college football, Spencer Hall going to stop by and help us take a look at some coaches walking into incredibly difficult situations in the 2024 college football season. Next on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We talked a little bit of NFL with our buddy Marshall Newhouse, and we appreciate him stopping by, as we appreciate our friend Spencer Hall coming by here. You guys can check out the Channel 6 newsletter, which is awesome. 2 things a week that are always incredibly entertaining. One of the best college football writers in America, as well as the co-host of the Shutdown Fullcast, the only college football podcast. Spencer, good morning. How you feeling, man?
Yeah, like I was telling you in pre-show, I'm a mess. I'm not ready for any of this. There's too much going on. I've had too much going on. I need a haircut and a beard trim bad. So you're getting like this. I'm gonna give you like full heads up. We're at like a 6 out of 10 this morning at best, but I'm gonna try.
I respect the incredible honesty, quite honest. As someone that also probably is due for a trim, I don't have to worry about the hair stuff anymore, but it's definitely been that kind of summer. And I don't know, in general, we were talking about prep for college football season a little bit off air, Spencer. That is something that also feels like it's changed a lot. Like, I don't know about you. Obviously, most of us very pro NIL, the portal, all these rights and things that have come up for players, it does make getting prepared for college football season as an analyst a lot different of a process, because I feel like I've got to wait till the last possible second for these rosters to steady enough for me to actually know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, you're closer than ever to being an elementary school teacher. This kid is on the list. I don't know if they're going to be at this school, though, come day one. So if they show up, cool, I'll remember their name. But until then, I'm just going to put them as provisional. Like, I think that's the thing. Everyone in college football is now provisional and can leave at any time. Feels like you could transfer at any time. It feels like you might decide to leave the program at any time. And, that's fine. That's a side effect of what we've agreed to do. However, as an analyst, if you're preparing for all of this, you do kind of lean back to the great dichotomy of football analysis is this. I have memorized every name. I have every stat in my brain. And I am a human computer ready to just unload information on you. And then on the other side of the bus in this meme is that boy nice watcher. Okay. And yes. I think as an analyst, you kind of have to tiptoe back and forth between, hey, that's a really great wham block that guy just threw. He's from North Dakota State, and they've always run a real pro-style blocking scheme, to, wow, that boy nice. So you kind of have to just balance between the two now in a way that I think is more important than ever.
Great explanation. As far as the big picture of teams that have jumped conferences, which team that has entered a new conference has the best chance of surprising, in a good way, obviously, in that conference?
I think the one who has the most, can I say the one I think who has the most initial credit, potential benefit / potential embarrassment to it, the biggest eyes and the biggest wager to place that we're going to see if it pays off is Texas. Because I think Texas is a program that, for better and worse, has gravity, has a large brand, has an immense amount of talent. Like in both like the historical terms and in the present tense, they are the biggest piece moving, I think, right now. And how they do in the SEC, we're going to laugh either way. Right? We're either going to laugh that Texas comes in and absolutely dominates, and we say that, oh, wow, the mythos of the SEC being this, dogfight year in and year out is a lie, or they're going to face plant. It just doesn't feel like we're going to get any sort of judgment on Texas this year in a direction that isn't one of those two.
You're right about that. Texas is always this, butt of jokes in a lot of different ways until they sort of flipped the script last year and made us all go ooh and ah in a much different way. And so you're right. That has the potential to be funny. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like we can say the same thing about what Kalen DeBoer is walking into. I've heard you and Bomani talk in the past about the Alabama job in general and what a different machine that thing tends to be. So what exactly, for people that might not be familiar, and certainly for Kalen DeBoer, who walks into this as an incredibly accomplished head coach at a lot of different levels, very recently at Washington, but now walks into this winning machine that was just handcrafted by the greatest coach of all time.
Well, and it's not just that. It's a winning machine at a winning machine. Alabama's been good even when their coaches might not necessarily be the best choice for management material. That's a place where I think the idea is that anybody can win 10 games at Alabama eventually. If you just hang around for 5 years, one of those, casino spins, right? One of those spins of the one-armed bandit is going to pop up 10 games because you have so many boosters who are committed to the notion of attracting talent, and you have so much support there that, if one of us got the Alabama gig, I dare say we could fake it for a year. We could fake it for a year if we just hired enough people, wrote enough checks, and pretended like we knew what we were doing. Year 2, it's all off the table at that point. Okay. I'd like to say I'm first. I think I got 9 months. I can fake it for 9 months of paychecks. And then in month 10, the wheels completely fall off. I think y'all probably have a little bit longer based on your bona fides. The point is, Kalen DeBoer allowed people to watch practice from the apartments that overlook Alabama's practice field. And this was a little story yesterday where people are going, oh, it's different now. Do you want to go to a place where that kind of scrutiny is applied to you, where we no longer freak out about people who don't know what they're looking at watching practice over Alabama's practice fields in a sport where we all pretty much know the plays, guys. We all know who the good guys are. I'm pretty sure that if somebody were filming Alabama's practice and they look down and they go, "Oh, Jalen Milroe's pretty good." Yeah, we know. There's a lot of tape on him. I never understand people who have closed practices. We know. What'd you do? Yeah, we tackled real well. Yeah, they're good tacklers. We know that, right? Oh, they got a couple of good 5 stars. Yeah, that's on paper. We can see that. But that's the kind of scrutiny that Alabama gets. And this is the kind of place where they had a 16-year run or whatever of, 10 wins. Like if they lost 2 games, that was news because they didn't do that very often. And the standard's going to be different. And I don't think this year is where we start to see the walls close in. I don't think it's that fast unless you see something extraordinary and out of keeping, by the way, with both Alabama's history as a program and Kalen DeBoer's as a coach, because Kalen DeBoer is an outstanding coach, but is going to be different. And when things are different, people start complaining.
Well, let's in the final minute or so we have left, let's keep it closer to home for you. You went to Florida. What does it look like for your Gators this year?
Yeah, it's awful. It's just don't look. Just don't look. It's going to be bad. It's a horrendous schedule. The program's still not particularly well run, and we're not recruiting the way that somebody who doesn't run their program with a Loctite kind of operation should. So still not real quite sure what Billy Napier is like excellent at. He might be kind of good at a lot of things, but we don't know. The schedule's awful. Gonna get killed. Yeah, there. I have nothing. I have no hope. I've given up all hope.
You know what, Spencer? I want to send you out here on a high note then, since talking about Florida clearly does not bring you joy here. When I think of rugby on my timeline, I think of you as one of the few people that exists in my college football space putting this out here. I saw the women's team win bronze. It was awesome and exciting. I want to know more about this. What, for you, for someone that's watched rugby a lot longer here, what is in your mind the thing that differentiates it from football that allows it to sell and be even more maybe enticing as a product to watch?
Well, I can tell you this: rugby sevens is shorter. So if you have a short attention span like I do, great. You can watch like 3 or 4 rugby sevens matches in the time it would take you to watch one American football game. So that's pleasant for me. But the thing I love is this: football really makes me a bad person sometimes. I want bad things for people. It encourages my worst instincts, and I don't behave very well. Rugby wants to make me be a better person. I don't know what the difference is. I watch rugby. The officials are so in charge of the game and the people respect them so much. I don't know if you know, they mic the referees. So the referees will say things like, they will walk over and go, "We can't have that mic." And they'll go, right. Sorry. By the way, that's across every tier of rugby. Every tier of rugby around the world, that is the MO for officials and players. It is a ruffians or hooligan sport played by gentlemen. And I just think there's something to that. By the way, if you just start watching rugby documentaries, you'll cry. You will cry left and right because there's always some deeply heartbreaking story just beneath the surface of what somebody's going through. I adore it. Watch all of it. Sevens, Union, League. It's awesome.
Team USA Women's Rugby was the highlight of the day. I could do nothing but stand in awe. Our sweet, beloved Steve Niederose became pommel horse guy for the internet. Simone Biles cements her place as the greatest U.S. gymnast of all time. When a hero emerges, we've all got to stand up and take notice.
Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. As you can see, we have Olympic fever here. Everybody here does. Everybody in the States does. Everybody in the world does. So let's wrap up the show today with the best social media from the Olympics, aka Olympic scrolls, okay? So viral moments, behind the scenes, all this cool stuff that we're getting out of the Olympic Village and the games. Let's start with Norwegian swimmer who has become a darling, a chocolate muffin darling specifically. So Henrik Christensen, he is the Olympic muffin man. So he found these chocolate muffins in the Olympic Village and he's fiending for these bad boys. He keeps those things on him. He's done all this social media about the muffins and like it's created a life of his own because now other people are responding to his TikToks about the muffins and they're showing themselves eating the muffins. But basically, he really loves these chocolate muffins and it's all over his feeds and he has a great sense of humor and has been making hysterical TikToks about them.
Dad, what I love about this is when we think of athletes at the peak of their profession, people always think, oh, well, you're fueling with all these incredible things. We hear all the time about the diets that go in for all of this. And sometimes that just goes out the window and it becomes about survival. We've heard the Olympic Village kind of sucks in terms of the lack of air conditioning there, having to sleep on these cardboard anti-sex beds, all this stuff that goes against high-end athletic performance. And so I'm proud of Henrik for looking at all of that and going, all right, well, a couple of muffins aren't going to be the difference for me then, as he mainlines what I think, Dad, is a staple of any continental breakfast ever created, is the chocolate chip muffin.
Oh, I completely agree. And he went whole hog on him. There's no doubt about it. He went crazy on him.
Double fist.
When you talk about going off your diet for a little bit, he went off his diet a lot. Or it seems at least he's playing it up anyway. And you're right, because it is amazing. You get some of the greatest athletes in the world together in a village, and all of a sudden there's nothing about the village that's conducive to great athletes, from beds to air conditioning to food available, it doesn't befit the world's greatest athletes, but they're able to go off a little bit and eat their muffins and enjoy themselves a little bit. And he certainly did. We're in a TikTok world now, so what can I say?
Hey, listen, there's plenty of athletes, by the way, that have gotten by eating nothing but junk food and candy. We remember DK Metcalf, most famously Chad Ochocinco as wide receivers with these great ripped bodies who can eat whatever they want. And, you certainly love that for all of these guys. I'd be curious how he actually feels getting up there, stuffed full of muffins, getting ready for this. I will say, the Continental Breakfast is also an easy place to make mistakes. I was in Japan at the Edition Hotel in Tokyo. They had this awesome Continental Breakfast, this bougie hoity-toity place. And I thought they had like a little dollop of whipped cream next to some of these muffins. So I'm pumped. I take the little dollop. I'm over here. And I actually took a little spoonful of it before. And I was like, man, it just tastes like I'm eating a wisp of air. And I asked my buddy to try it. I tried to put it on something. It was margarine. It was 100% like a butter variant that I'm just eating by the spoonful over there because my fat ass thought that it was whipped cream. So you got to be on guard. At least the chocolate muffin tells you exactly what it is at the breakfast buffet.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my life.
I didn't know you went to Japan. That's cool.
Yeah, no, not a lot of people have heard about it. I've tried to keep this pretty low key that I went there, but we're not here to talk about Japan. We're here to talk about Paris. So now that we've gone through the Muffin Man, Jesse, who else do we have next year on our tour of scrolls?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of tours of the village. We know all about the cardboard anti-sex beds. Apparently, the actual mattresses are super thin and not comfortable either, so that sucks. But Coco Gauff showed us a new challenge, if you will. 10 girls, 2 bathrooms. So she posted a video showing the absolute chaos that is 10 girls getting ready in a room that only has 2 bathrooms. So we're doing hair, we're doing makeup, we're doing all kinds of things. And let me just tell you, as a girl, 10 girls for 2 bathrooms is way too many. Way too many. Way too many. And she did actually go ahead and say that, like, I think like a few days after this video was posted, most people left the Olympic Village. She's like the only tennis player left there. So now she said it's only 5 girls for 2 bathrooms. I can work with that number. 10, no way.
Yeah. 5 went to a hotel. So there's just 5 and 2 bathrooms. 10 guys, 2 bathrooms. That would be a breeze. I mean, guys spend oh yeah.
There's so many sinks to pee in.
But there's
the
bad boy of, you guys doing
doesn't
that.
Matter. Doesn't matter. Would not be an issue at all.
Really?
Nope.
Is there enough time in the day for all 10 of you to have your turn? Go number 2 on the toilet?
What, pooping?
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can figure out the poop schedule. Now, again, you got to factor in all the muffins that everyone's eating right now. It's going to do some different things to your digestive system if that hasn't been your pre-camp diet. So, yeah, that absolutely is a factor in there. But men are remarkably resourceful, and we also need less bathroom time. Like you saw there, they're getting ready, and I mean, that involves so many things, even for Olympic competition. Like I remind everyone, they're not getting ready for a night out. They're not getting ready for the opening ceremony. They're getting ready for the actual freaking Olympics in that setup. So that is the other thing to factor in here. But yeah, we just don't need as many things or have as many things in there. It would still be messy. But again, we've got plenty of places to pee inside there, and all of us can get around the poop stuff pretty amicably.
Oh, yeah. Plus, if you poop somewhere else, you don't have to poop in the room. I mean, guys are brushing their teeth, throwing some deodorant on, and you're good to go. You're ready to go. So you're spending 30 seconds to a minute.
Yeah, they could solve that problem by just putting more mirrors on the walls. For girls, it's like you just need a mirror. You got to do the hair, do the makeup. You know what I mean? You need a mirror for that.
The best part about the pooping situation is, though, guys love pooping with a buddy. Like, that was my favorite thing about the locker room at Notre Dame is when you'd go to the bathroom, we had all our stalls on one side and we had mirrors on the other side where the sinks were. And we used to just open the stall door so we could see each other and talk while we went to the bathroom. So you had a buddy.
I'm sorry. Did you just refer to that as a poop buddy?
Yeah, you needed a pooping buddy. There would be days where I would ask, like, hey, does anyone else have to go when I'm going over there? Because it's not fun to do it alone. And this way you got to leave your phone behind at the locker room and just talk to one of your friends. It was bonding.
This is why God stays in heaven, because of this stuff. He does live in fear of what he's created, and it's you guys.
What else do we have video-wise, Jesse? I'm sorry.
God, for the love of God. All right, let's talk about thousands of miles away from this poop situation and the Olympic Village. We got the Olympic Village in Tahiti for surfers. It's on a cruise ship, assuming they have regular beds on the cruise ship, although they might have those freaky little bunk beds, though, maybe, that are on cruise ships. No, it's like the guest quarters of a cruise ship. So they have normal beds. But it looks like the Germans are having fun. In 2 TikToks from New Zealand, they show the Germans welcoming them to the village and getting the ship hyped as they pass a speaker around the balcony. Guys, I think it's funny that there's Germans at the surfing portion of the Olympics right there. Like, it just wouldn't strike me as like a sport that Germans would be good at.
I was going to say, the easygoing, vibes-based sport of surfing does not seem to lend itself well to Deutschland.
Yeah.
But how about the cruise ship just full of surfers? Because, in the Olympic Village, you're talking about different athletes in different sports. This is one sport. They have their own cruise ship. I mean, who's got it better than them outside of being 10,000 miles away from the actual, Olympic venue? But they have their own cruise ship, and they're all surfers. So, a few of them, I'm sure, know one another. It's got to be like party time out there.
They're also chill. If you go by the stereotype of surfers, like, it's got to be super chill on that cruise ship.
Yeah,
very chill.
And
honestly,
regular
I
beds.
Because you're in Tahiti, you're with a bunch of surfers on a cruise ship. The vibes seem great. I love that they're all having a great time, and that somewhere over there is a miserable Colin Yost, the Saturday Night Live host, who is over there helping with the coverage, dealing with a foot infection, an ear infection. I saw him on the screen with his foot out of the water, his ear out of the water, and his ass in the water being handed a drink, just absolutely wishing he was anywhere else other than one of the best places on earth.
He had to be thinking, what a great gig that I have, and it's turned into hell on earth for him in Tahiti. It's amazing.
Yeah, Colin Jost, the only person having a bad time in Tahiti right now at the Olympics. So we wish him well and all the best. And keep on posting over there. The content's been elite. and we appreciate it. I understand Dad's a little confused by TikTok, and on most days so am I, but that doesn't mean any of you should stop. Coming up next, we won't either. A closing ceremony involving Tom Cruise? Sure, next. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Zumo, all those fun, cool places. Look at all of them. Help us out. And if you miss any of the show there or any of our great guests, thank you to 11-year NFL veteran offensive tackle Marshall Newhouse for stopping by and helping us talk about the NFC, and Spencer Hall, the best college football writer in America, for coming by and helping us take a look at the upcoming college football season. You can, by the way, catch Spencer and the rest of the crew from the Shutdown Fullcast live in Raleigh, North Carolina on August 24th. Make sure you check out. I'm sure you can still grab tickets for that as we head up to that. Going to be a fun show for the only college football podcast on the internet. Guys, let's get to this, though. The Olympic opening ceremony obviously brought about a lot of conversation from people that I think are bad actors and need to mind their own business a little bit, but and maybe just read before you assume what you think something is. The closing ceremony could involve Tom Cruise, apparently. Tom Cruise, famous for doing his own stunts, learning how to fly planes for these movies, is apparently going to perform a stunt at the closing ceremony to pass the torch from Paris to LA, where the 2028 games are. So, Dad, have you been amazed that Tom Cruise has been able to maintain relevance for this long?
He has. Doing his own stunts. I mean, he's up there in age, too. So, I'm particularly not a huge fan of him in the action star movies, but he's still getting it done. Whether he's well liked or not, I don't know. But he doing his own stunts, breaking his ankle and hurting himself while doing it. I mean, I'll give him that. I mean, there's a lot of people use stunt men and stunt women who are just incredible people. but he does a lot of them himself. So you got to give him credit for that.
He's rappelling down from the top of the Stade de France. I don't know how you pronounce that. I took Spanish.
Yeah,
and then landing in the stadium field carrying the Olympic flag. And then the TV broadcast is actually going to play a recorded skydive to the Hollywood sign that he already filmed. Which, to your point, Dad, we kind of had this conversation when it came with the Paul brothers and boxing, which is however you feel about them. And that was probably from before when they were just doing the prank videos and a lot of stuff that myself and others thought crossed the line at various junctures, the way they carried themselves, what have you. They chose a field where you can't really fake the funk. Like, yeah, you can stage some of these fights, but you still got to go out there and train and fight and actually put on the gloves and do that thing. And that's a difficult thing to choose to be your thing, even if you're going to be insanely popular. For Tom Cruise, it's kind of the same deal where, yeah, if you want to make your thing the guy who jumps out of planes and does his own stunts, then yeah, I can not like some of the things that you're about and still go, damn, you picked the tough thing at least.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah, he did. He may be his biggest fan, but still, he's doing the thing. So you got to give him credit for it.
Not a fan. Okay.
You can tell it's just seeping out there. He doesn't really like it. Jesse, let's go to that. We'll sink our teeth into this the other day, and we'll go to that right now.
Yeah, so the robots are probably coming for us, right? Like, we accept our robot overlords. If they're listening right now, we're cool with you. Likely an early piece of their planning is getting Taco Bell, everybody's favorite except for mine, to implement AI into their drive-throughs. So check out this Twitter user using the product here.
Are you checking in with your app today to earn points?
No, not today.
What would you like to order?
Can I get 2 bean burritos and a medium Coke?
Okay. Is that all for you today?
I mean, it seems to be working. I'm a little more concerned about what the guy's ordering. Did he just ask for 3 bean burritos?
Bean burritos.
Just beans?
Yeah, judge lest not ye be judged, all right? The grilled stuffed beef burrito at the Taco Bell is a staple of my order and one of the greatest fast food menu items of all time.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't know.
Now,
that's first of all. Second off, Dad, where are you at on this in terms of letting AI take over drive-through jobs?
Well, it's a human giving the food, though, and taking the money, right? I mean, we didn't go that far, did we?
So right now.
For now.
Right. Listen, I was just impressed with the clarity of the speaker, quite honestly.
That's the real
normally that stuff is garbled and you can't understand what anybody's saying. You spend your time going, what did you say? So if that can all be that clear, I'm all for that because it's still humans giving out the food and taking the money. So, I don't like when AI starts taking over all of that stuff as well.
Well, it's only a matter of time.
This is my thing, though, is I know how frustrated I get sometimes when you call a service and it's all automated, right? Like you have something that happens with an airline or a hotel, and it's a really specific situation. I just need to talk to a human being, and I just keep getting, push this number, say this into the thing, and none of it's actually answering my very specific question, even if they tried to. And sometimes you just need that. I'm worried that I'm going to be drunk as hell, wanting to add something specific to my order. Like, is the AI going to understand when I ask for my McDouble at McDonald's with Big Mac sauce on it? I don't know if they're going to have the ability to process that. Maybe, but if I want to mix and match these orders while I'm under the influence, and all of a sudden this AI is not giving me the answer I want, I can't have a constructive back and forth at it. I can't get yelled at by it potentially if I'm stepping out of line the way that would happen at like a Waffle House. Like imagine if they automated Waffle House employees, how much of the charm that would take out of the experience. It'd be awful.
Oh, no. That would be awful.
Well,
that
AI
makes sense.
Fight. AI doesn't have hands yet.
But that you're right about changing up your order. That would be interesting because that person in the video that did that person changed a few things and the AI changed with them. It actually handled it pretty well. So I don't know. I didn't think of it going through, in drunk and ordering you did.
It's fourth meal, but
I will say, if it makes the lives of the employees inside easier, because to Jesse's point, and to your point, there are still humans in there that would be handling the food order. If this takes one other thing off their plate and doesn't eat into their paychecks, then I will be somewhat okay with this, even if my user experience just becomes just like everything else, a little more automated in a way that's slightly dystopian and not super cute. But speaking of slightly dystopian, Jesse, let's get to the third. I feel like this is the perfect segue.
Yeah, we have some Gen Z news. Senior, you might want to do earmuffs for this one because you're not going to understand it at all. A company friend is creating a wearable necklace that uses AI to combat loneliness. So for $99, you can always have somebody to talk to. So it's a necklace that is your friend, a buddy you can wear. And this is real freaky, guys. It's real freaky. Shouldn't we just be encouraging people to have human-to-human interaction?
This sounds like the plot of Her.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't understand. The necklace talks to you?
Yeah, it's your friend. It's like you ain't got no friends. Now you can buy one and put it around your neck, and you can be like, "Hey, I'm really lonely," and it's gonna talk to you.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life.
Like we did.
What,
or make human friends.
What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is really a thing?
It's gonna be. Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, that woman looks happy as hell with her little neck. It looks like a life alert pendant, though. That's the problem, is we gotta zhuzh them up a little bit, because right now it looks like they've fallen and they can't get up.
It's also huge. Like, everyone's gonna be like, well, there goes another person with a freaky little AI friend.
You look like Steven Glansberg just walking around having lunch by yourself on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely called out with that because of how big it is. I agree. Plus, I mean, get a real friend. This is supposed to be soothing. It's supposed to satisfy that friendship craving by talking to a disc.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, apparently. I have often felt for the youth of America, because growing up with the technology that I received as a young adult seems like a poisonous way to live. Again, you know what? If you're lonely and this helps you, great. I'm just saying, fashion. We need to make this thing look cooler and a little bit less obtrusive, because right now, this just feels like another way for already lonely people to probably get bullied. Although, does Gen Z bully? Have they rid the world of that because they're all nice to each other? I'm not really sure.
I don't think so.
This just feels like, again, you could have had Tamagotchi. We could have just done that again. That was pretty fun. Little friend in my pocket. I'm sorry I let mine die so often. That's on me. I needed to be a better dad. We'll be a better friend to you. Right now, if you want something to hit in your little pendant, we'll talk to you. Just download, subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys later.